So what do you do when you've got all these apple scratchings left over from cider making? Well, I'll show you, and there is an equivalent that you'll be able to do as well. You'll most likely not have this volume of apple remains to deal with, but Halloween's coming up, pumpkin time, so you can basically do the same thing as I'm doing over here, that I'll show you in a minute, with pumpkins. So this is an idea ahead of the event, so that you could perhaps coerce your neighbours into giving you their pumpkins when they're finished with them. Ignore the small amount of veg matter on top. I just didn't have any roast about it. So I've had compost that is basically bracken compost mixed with grass, hot composted so there's no weeds, and it was a little bit rough, so I've layered in the apple scratches. It's got moderately warm. I haven't got a thermometer here, but this will rot down very fast and it will produce this lovely dark compost from the procedure. This is the standard of compost, just a little bit too rough, so maturing with the apple scratchings will work absolutely perfect. Now, a little note on pumpkins: you don't have to break them down as much as I have with the apples. The apples for the cider process naturally does this. If you can chop the pumpkins a little bit, that's great. If you put them in whole, as they decay, worms will completely sort them out, so it's not a biggie. It's up to your level of physicality, I suppose. But yes, seriously, I like exercise, that's why I'm doing it. Probably no other reason, if I'm honest. One note I would like to say: I'm not aiming to make this pile warm. Probably that's a bit of a downside about mixing it into a thorough. It will attract the anaerobic, sorry, not the anaerobic process, the thermophilic process a little bit. I don't really want it to do that, and it is beneficial. You shouldn't get a problem with pumpkins. It does no harm, but it's not needed. So basically just finish off the pile, let it go, and that's the last bit of exercise I get from the composting process in this bit. That's it, set it for winter. How I not finish, but how I put the compost to rest until the springtime, so I maximise the qualities of the compost. So here you see it. Basically, it's layered in with Comfrey, and the worms will do the rest. They'll move up, down through, and they'll pass through all this Comfrey. I will add another layer later on, not just yet. But the compost, the worms will soon get in there, pass through all this lot, and increase the quality of this compost by a good percentage. What I'm up to, this material that I'm moving here is bracken made into compost, a little bit rough. This is the stuff that I'm mixing the apple scratchings in with. Underneath here, I don't know if you can see it, there's a metal grid. Beneath the metal grid is the Woodchip, the Woodchip compost from the spring. What I've done is I put that metal down so I wouldn't go down further than the original compost, and then composted above it. Because what I wanted to do is find out what effect of having hot compost has had on this compost that was in a fairly good state before I did this. So what I'm going to do is I've just got to dig this grid out, remove it, and we'll have a look. So let's get down there. So the answer comes back, not a lot. So what I'm going to do now is dependent on a small colony that I've found down here. I'll just move the camera a minute. So down here is a lot of fungal activity, which will be very good at breaking down the wood chips. So I'm going to change tack. I'm going to put the mesh, I'm going to move this lot and put the mesh back on it and leave it there, and just hope that the fungal activity will work over winter. We'll see how that goes. This is my worm bin at home. I'm halfway through harvesting the compost. That is said compost I'm harvesting. This is the top layer that's got all the food in it and most of the worms. I've taken that top slice off first so that I can then dig out the older nutritious compost below. I'm putting it in a potato bucket which has got holes in the bottom for a particular reason which will become apparent a little bit later. And it's just a matter of digging down, removing all this compost which is now packed full of nutrients. This bucket then goes in the compost heap that has got the apple scratchings in, and what I'm hoping to do is get the worms to move out. They won't like the disturbance. Hopefully they'll go out through the bottom. Now then, this bit is showing the material that's left in the bin, and I will replace that with new compost that is spent, and then place the food scraps back on top. So what I'm looking to do is both create worm castings and reinvigorate old spent compost, and it works very well for highly nutritious compost. Not quite as good as worm castings, but I'm not disciplined enough to do worm castings alone. So this is Mike's way of doing worms. Many of you regular viewers will see me making hot compost before. This is slightly different because this is using the buckwheat remains that you saw me chopping last week. So what I've done is I'm removing 1/3 of the pile, mixing 1/3 within the actual dalek itself. The other main ingredients are wood shavings and grass, of course, and then it's a matter of putting those two materials in fresh in layers, mixing them together with the older mixed material. That should regenerate the heat in this pile. So this pile is 1-year-old leaves, predominantly oak, so they're taking their time to break down. That's come off the board plot, as you saw last week, mixed with grass, a few other woody bits, and a collection of weeds. It's had 2 loads so far, so it's been turned already. It'll have another turn now, and then that'll be it. It needs another turn in about a week's time. Thanks a lot for joining me, guys. I'll see you again next time. Until then, enjoy your gardening.